Welcome to Winds of Whimsy, where the past is honored and the future is handmade, layering love, texture, and time into stories where beauty lives in the imperfections, the layers, the flaws that remain. Today on Winds of Whimsy, we're honoring heritage and heart with a romantic rustic twist on the classic patriotic flag, using salvaged wood, vintage-inspired textures, and aged finishes. We'll create a piece that feels like it's lived 100 summers before today. I'm starting here with a soft coat of DIY white Swan, letting the grain peek through. It doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, the charm is in the uneven brush strokes and worn edges. It's what gives a piece heart and soul, in my opinion. Just get a light layer on there. See, let that layer dry. After that is dry, I add a layer of DIY Hey Sailor. It's the perfect blue to coordinate with our blue calico inlay that will become the background for our stars. Again, I'm not precise in this application, as you can see. I'm going for a rustic vibe and texture. So just apply this quickly without being too careful. You'll also see me at one point stippling. I'm just trying to get texture in this underneath layer. We will be going over this with more white paint. And each layer does need to dry in between. Okay, now that that is dry, we have one more layer of color. White Swan is again applied when the blue has dried. I like to leave some hints of the blue peeking through, and this will become our base for the paint inlays. Crust. Paint Couture has a wonderful product that allows me to create a gritty paint that will add an additional layer of texture to the creation. DIY also has a salt watch, which achieves a similar result, but I don't have any of that currently, and this is what I happen to have on hand today. So I mixed some white paint in with this crust medium, and I am applying this with a stick, just in random areas. I don't need too much of it. I'm focusing on the edges and in some of those cracks. I then take a brush to kind of smooth out the edges. This will just allow some areas where the glaze and aging will settle in and help to give this a time-worn look. Now we're ready to really make some magic happen. So I begin by applying the blue calico inlay from the IOD Delft Traditions Azure. This will become our field of stars on the flag. White Swan is applied evenly in a thick coat, and that will allow a good connection to the paint inlay into the wet paint. I have sprayed the inlay with a mist of water to the paint side and, working quickly, apply it to the wet paint. I then smooth out the wrinkles, and you really do need to work quickly with this as the paint will transfer immediately. Another little spray of water and gently press the inlay to make sure there is a good connection with the paint, and then we wait for it to dry. Next, we will add the red floral stripes to our flag. These are from the IOD Petite Fleur red inlay. Again, I add the White Swan paint where each inlay is to be placed, and working quickly, begin to place them into the wet paint after lightly misting with water. You can allow these inlays to dry overnight naturally, or you can speed up the process using a heat gun or a hair dryer to gently make them dry a little faster. This project was a fun process. I had been challenged by Aunt Bee's attic to come up with something patriotic using this blue and red inlay. And the plan is to continue on a patriotic theme here, and I'm going to work on some more ideas using the new summer release that we just received. Here I was trimming and trimming the edge off of that centerpiece so that those inlays will come right up beside each other, so it will fit together seamlessly. No one will ever know that was pieced together. Okay, these inlays are now dry, And this is where the magic happens with the IOD paint inlays. We will mist again with water, and I allow that to sit for 30 to 60 seconds. It needs to soak into the paper, and that will allow us to gently pull it back, leaving a soft aged effect that feels hand painted, sun faded, and full of history and story. Isn't that beautiful? It's very satisfying to peel these inlays off and see that beautiful image left behind in the paint. So much fun. So time-worn and beautiful. Can you see that crust? Look at it in the crack there. There's another hint of crust peeking through. You will see how that grabs the antiquing process in just a little bit. I love how this is turning out, but I do decide I need some kind of a border around that blue calico area. So I pull out a sheet of the transfer and trim a tiny strip of blue off one of these elements. This was a little tricky. I had to be very careful when applying this so that I wouldn't reactivate the blue calico. These paint inlays can be reactivated with water, and we use water to apply them, so that made this a little tricky, but it turned out fine in the end. Here I'm trimming some other pieces. I considered adding some more blue to the edges of my board. You'll see me kind of play around with that, dry fitting them, but in the end I decided I didn't like that and it was going to make things too busy. Here I take a fine paintbrush and apply a thin line of the white paint. I don't think I wet these because they were so tiny. I just put them right on the paint. I was afraid they would tear. So I do that on both sides, and then you will see me take a wet wipe. So I sprayed a little water to make sure it was good and damp, and I used that to wet this inlay. I did reactivate along the edge slightly, but it was fine. I'm not going for perfection here. Okay, so now they're dry and I need to remove them. I have a dilemma again because this is such a tiny area. So what I did was used a Q-tip wet with water to re-moisten the strip since I was not able to use the spray bottle at this point, and that worked perfectly. And it gave me the tiniest border around that calico to finish that off perfectly. Now I'm doing a little distressing. I did try a little sandpaper around the edges. And here is where I make a big boo-boo. So as I said, these are not sealed and they can be reactivated. I thought I would sand it lightly to give it some distress, and I found it just smeared blue all over. And I was sad, but I thought maybe it still will work. It just looked like a blue background then, but I really liked the white as the background. So in the end, I ended up totally redoing that area. At this point, since this paint can be reactivated, I went in with just a little water and a tiny paintbrush and reacted some of the color in those flowers. Because I had so much texture on my wood, there were a good amount of cracks. So I just smoothed that paint out just a little bit to help it fill in. And it worked perfectly. I didn't want all of it filled in because I do like that imperfection, but this made me happy. Okay. Here you can see I was not liking the amount of blue that was showing through in some of these areas, so I'm just taking a little white Swan, going back in and putting a light coat over top of some of that while still allowing just a hint of that blue to show through. DIY paint does not contain a sealer. It can be reactivated with water, so you must be very careful. When you're finished with a piece and it's good and dry, you need to seal that either with some type of finish, brush-on finish, or a wax. Here I'm going around the edges with the Hey Sailor again, just to finish that area off. I was being very careful not to get it on the white on the top. I did not want to take a chance of smearing these paint inlays, so I don't show it here, but this piece already has been lightly sprayed with a spray sealer, and I allowed that to dry before I brushed on this DIY liquid patina. Even though I did that, I was still very careful and used a light hand with plenty of product because I did not want to disturb the pigments in these inlays. And it worked perfectly. Now I'll allow that to dry. And here I have wrapped my brush in a baby wipe, and I'm just wrapping that liquid patina brush up to save it for later in case I need it again. That will save me from washing it. Now it's time to add the glazes and aging to this piece. So here I'm using DIY Old and Gray. Just in some areas, this tones down the brightness and adds softness to the edges, but I did want that white to still shine through. I just wanted a bit of age. So you'll see I dab this on in areas, and then I use a paper towel or a wet wipe, and I dab and wipe that off till I'm happy with the color. Just keep adding layers until you're happy with the finished result. From when I had to repaint that, so I concentrate some of that aging in that area, and it does help to camouflage where I add just a tiny bit of sand. Where I start to add that light brown sugar glazing around the edges, just to add a little more depth and a little more interest. Tribute to country, history, and handmade soul. A piece that tells a story in every